Samira,
Hello.
hi. Thank you so much for being here and for making it out all the way to the gallery to have a conversation about your work in the powder room. I don't know. So I just wanted to have a general conversation about some of the goals of the work and the origins of the work. I know it's a very personal series for you,
Yeah.
which rings true to me as an artist. I also make really personal work. Um, so it's just kind of like a great organic conversation that we can have about the work that's in our powder room gallery right now.
I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. It's a great little show. I mean, it's just brought so much joy.
Well, it's such a great little space. Like
Yeah.
it's so fun.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So, yeah, if you wouldn't mind start talking about some of the origins of I know there's a whole backstory to sort
yeah.
of the aims of the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I recently, as you know, we built a studio at our new home, which is just a few blocks from the lake,
Mhm.
which takes me almost every morning that I'm home to watch the sunrise over Lake Michigan.
Mhm.
So I walk out my door and I can see that ribbon of light that comes up over there. And it's a great reminder of a ritual that my mother had. So my mom was she was born at a really hard time in Germany just before World War II, and she had a really hard life.
Mhm.
And her whole life, as long as I knew her, my whole life, she would get up in the morning, no matter how bad it was. She would watch the sunrise and she would say, the sun came up. It's a good day.
Mhm.
And so in the last years of her life, she was with us. She either lived with us or near us.
Oh, wow.
And I spent a lot of mornings with her. And we lived a little bit further from the lake. So we would get in the car and drive down to the lake to watch the sun just come up. And even in her last, weeks and months while she was battling what we found to be brain cancer and dementia, she would still do it. She didn't know who I was or where she was, or some days who she was, but she knew the sun came up and it was a good day.
Yeah.
So now I take those images and those sketches and those memories and abstract them in encaustic wax and oil paint. Sometimes they're very cryptic and conceptual, and sometimes they're a little more literal, but they are always about something, specific, or, there are things that are created because I can remember that morning, either with her or without her. That was really, really special. So it's an amazing thing, and it's a catalyst into a conversation about shifting our paradigm, which I think is really important in today's world.
Sure. Which paradigm?
So you get up and everything goes wrong. Your coffee mug hits the floor, your animals are crazy, your kids are, driving you nuts, whatever it would be, your car doesn't start, maybe work is not your favorite place to go.
Yeah.
And or there's just too much of it and it's really bad. But even as an artist who gets to make the work, it's still work, right?
Yeah.
So everything's going wrong. What do you do?
Mhm.
Like, we're in some control of what we have. And if we can look outside and see the sun or the light, or we can, look at any one thing and then think about, how do I now shift the day?
Yeah.
My mom lived in chronic pain. I do now. And some days are hard. So get up and look at what you have, because we have to live.
Yeah.
And we have to get along, and the world's divisive. So, how do you not get bogged down?
Yeah.
Shift your paradigm. It's a good day.
It's so interesting. And I had this conversation a couple of days ago too. Making space for being an artist, because artists wear so many hats. We're a marketing team. We are, oh God, we do all the things, all the administrative things, then, and then we also have to make the artwork. But then there's also making space to be a human. And I find that there's like so much slippage between like that relationship. Like there's such a Venn diagram between being a human and being an artist, where like they're separate, but not really. And it just sounds like I don't know. It sounds like you might have a really interesting insight into like how you feed being a human and how you feed being an artist and that intersection of those things.
I don't know if I think of them as separate.
Separate. Mhm.
I think especially if you talk to other artists, right?
Sure.
So I spent some time interviewing artists for some documentaries a while back, and we didn't let any of them see one another's videos.
Oh,
Like
fun.
they were we didn't even tell them who the other artists were. They were all in the same community space, their studios were. And what we find is that when you talk to artists, and I ask the question a lot, why this art?
Mhm.
Like, why art? What is it? They say, I couldn't do anything else. So think about every other species. There are very few species on the earth that make art, right? It's what we do. It's what we've essentially done as long as we've existed.
Mhm.
Cave drawings, think about, Venus,
Oh, sure.
figures, tribal communities, third world countries, developed countries, we all make art. We all have a different idea of it, but we all make art, and it's all around us, creative thought. So I don't think we can really separate ourselves. I think we've created that divide because we have to market, and we have to budget, and we have to get supplies, and we have to show our work, and then we have to get it ready. And so we take all those steps that are outside of the creative and we separate them. But really, at its core, as an artist, can you do anything different?
Oh, no, it's not a choice.
It's not
not
a
a
choice. And
You know,
so
and if I'm not if I go a long period of time without making,
it's
it's painful and like I get weird and not a fun way. It's like
absolutely.
weirdness that happens. And but it's just so interesting because like artists that make really personal work, I think also that relationship that it's so overlapped, like the personal and the, even if like you are have the drive, which is innate, like to be an artist, like if you're not making really personal work like about your mother, and I've also made work about my mom, and it's, I can't speak to what their aims are, but I feel like making personal work really, it becomes really inseparable. But then I don't know, like I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say, but yeah.
I think we want to believe that art is sometimes not personal.
Yeah.
Sometimes we call it craft, like we divide it, but if you think about it, the core of why we do creative things is about being human.
Sure.
And if you can leave them connected, I think the work is better. It's less derivative. It's conceptually more interesting. And, yes, I like to make pretty things, but listening to a lot of authors, reading a lot of authors, I think the words pretty or beautiful or lovely, they're kind of watered down. They're not connected to meaning. And so,
or super subjective. Like, what
yes,
is your definition of beauty?
beauty, right?
Yeah.
It kind of, it's gotten a bad name.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I will say beauty, but it's a very commercial
Yeah.
sort of word.
Yeah.
And that might have to do with how we communicate today. But I think getting down to meaning is much more important. So yes, this is personal work, but it is also about texture and color and layers and exploring new media. And this work is about, how to build something.
Yeah.
It's about being reactive, and caustic wax forces you to be reactive,
Sure.
responsive to the media, and it's also nice because it's both additive and reductive.
Sure.
So there's so many of these paradoxical qualities about working with wax. It's cold and hard, it's warm and malleable.
Yeah.
I mean, how many things can we describe like that?
Can you talk or speak to a little bit more about like the connection between the connections maybe even that you found that maybe you didn't know were going to be there, or I don't know, some kind of dichotomy in the process of working with wax or working with the media that's in the show, and the person? Is there, like, did you find any kind of connection or satisfaction?
Well, there's all kinds of them that come up,
Yeah.
and there's a couple of pieces that are pure oil
Mhm.
paint. They were my, my first pieces of oil paint that I ever showed.
Sure.
So I'd not worked with the media before December.
Mhm.
And so the thing about oil paint is it's slow.
Mm,
It's
mhm.
patient.
Yeah.
Whether you are or not,
Right.
it's taking its own sweet time to
Mhm.
dry and to cure. And then there's wax. And the wax, you heat it up, the pigments are different.
Mm.
It is the absence of patience. It is, and you can finish so many layers. If I'm working in a small oil painting, it may
Mhm.
take me 10 days to get 10 layers, right?
Sure.
If I'm really doing it the way I think it's supposed to be done, and I say think because it's all new to me.
Yeah.
But in wax, those 10 layers may be done in an hour and a half,
Wow. Yeah.
and you can add them on and take them off. You can deal with the opacity and transparency in a different way.
Mhm.
And so all of those things mix. You can, lay colors side by side, but when you heat them up, they're going to mix. So how
Sure.
do you not get muddy? How do you keep something distinct? And then, if you heat them up, they get really smooth.
Mm.
But my favorite part is like when it's really texture, it's rough, it's gritty,
Mhm. I love that too.
yeah, then it's really kind of giving you that sense of the stones, the rocks, the sea glass,
Mm.
and then, the water. So,
Mhm.
so some of the pieces will be, much harsher at the bottom and much smoother at the top. And so, I mean, it's really fun
Yeah.
being able to just take that and explain it. And then when you're done with the wax, you can add the oil to it. So you want to
Okay.
enhance a color, take an area back or bring it forward. You can do that by adding oil paint to
There's
the
like a
tops. You
lot
can
of
rub it
play.
in. Yeah, there's so
Oh,
much.
that's great.
It's so much fun. And I knew I loved it before we built the studio. So we actually have all the vents and all the safety
Yes.
like right there. So, I've been able to, it was the first thing I kind of jumped into, even though primarily my studio is print.
Mm.
This has been, yeah, it's been a real joy. So
So I want to go back to something that you said about like memory versus observation with this series. So are some of, which I don't think I realized, so are some of these paintings in the It's a Good Day series, are some of them from memory and some of them are
absolutely,
from observation from your
absolutely.
studio?
So, warmer months, you might sit in plein air
Sure.
paint, but
Because you also made all of these works very quickly.
Yes.
In January.
yes.
So
But I've lived in Wisconsin near the lake now for nearly 24 years.
Sure.
I mean, I did before, but observing the lake for
Yeah.
nearly 24 years. And for most of that time, we've had cell phones, but before that, I would carry a camera. So I've always been able to take the pictures, but I don't like to work from a picture.
Sure.
So, when it's cold, you hold the memories,
Yeah.
you snap the picture. When it's warm, you might sit and sketch. I might sit down for a couple hours in the morning and sketch as it changes, or I might go down at the same time every day for 3 weeks and try to capture the same time of day and how the light is different in the beginning of April till the end of April,
Sure.
if I have that opportunity. But sometimes there's a particular morning. I don't know if I think there's a piece called Bubble Gum
Yes.
in this
Bubblegum
piece.
Sky, maybe, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's an early memory because I took my then young sons, I think one was 2 and one would have been 9,
Okay.
down to see the sunrise. It's mom's favorite thing.
Mhm.
My mother wasn't back in the States. She'd been living overseas, and we went down to the lake and the sky was that pink.
Yeah.
That bubblegum pink, and
Yeah.
the kids knew it. The little one was calling it bubblegum. I mean,
Mhm.
so that rich color against the green in a really spring sky, and the
Mhm.
sky changes.
Oh, yeah.
The
Changes
grays
so
and
quickly.
blues from season,
Mhm.
from morning till, early morning till late morning. So yeah, sometimes they're from memory.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to capture a feeling, an essence of memory,
Yeah.
as much as the beauty of the light and the
Yeah.
atmosphere and the
So
water.
how does that come into play when you're making the piece then? Like, is there a different, are you approaching it differently, or does it start differently or progress differently if it's from memory versus from observation?
Well, yes and no. So I prepare the night before for the work I'm going to do in the studio.
Okay.
So I will skim through materials, sketchbook, a journal. A lot of times, the memory is captured in writing because I write as well.
Sure.
So I read about it, I remember it. And then, there's a process of deciding, do I want this to be texture? Do I want this to be color? What's my palette going to look like? And I'll make a few notes, but then I won't return to those materials. I'll have a list of pieces or ideas, but I won't return to those original. The only thing I have left then is what's in my mind when I get to the studio. So it's the feeling. I heard Dan Addington a couple weeks ago talk about what we do as artists. I was at the business of art in art galleries, sort of talk with a friend. And he said, sometimes our job is to make the non-visible visible. So, it's visceral, but it's not something we see when you have what it felt like to be on the shore that day. Or, or when it starts out really bad and the light comes up, there are moments that just seeing the light is the change you need, right? Sometimes nature just gives it to you. And so those days, then you're trying to give the viewer the opportunity to capture that, but I don't really explain them. There's a little bit in the titles, but from bubblegum, you're not going to get everything that was wrapped up in that morning for me with my children on the sand. So it's that idea of, what can I give you that is more than just this? What do you see is as important, and it's such a new series. I don't know who the audience is. I know who's beginning to respond to it, but I started it. I mean, I think only 4 of the pieces are prior to our conversation about finishing the show. So there's all kinds of new stuff in there.
And you said, and you've continued it. We talked
I
about
have. I enjoyed oils so much that I did 12 large pieces that just came off the wall of the gallery in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
So these are small works that we have, like
So,
tiny ones. So the 4
by
4 to 12 by 12.
Yeah.
How big are the big ones?
36 inches square is the largest. There are some long pieces, which is counterintuitive. Talk about, changing how you see things, shifting your paradigm. If you only get a sliver of the light.
And you're working vertically?
So
and
some are,
not
there are 2 or 3 that are just tall, long vertical pieces. I think they're 12 by 36.
Cool.
And quite a few squares. I'm finding it's interesting to crop the image, and a few of those long pieces you expect. And I showed next to an amazing artist named Sujit Sudhi. He's from India, and he does watercolor. And it's his second job, but he's a computer programmer, and then he does these amazing realistic watercolors. But because of the way he works, there's always something unexpected. And in these pieces, there was water and big skies. So we literally integrated them. And it was so interesting to try to come back and do a piece huge after, you work here in front of you, and it's how much can I get into the space? And then even in these big ones, the interesting piece for me was then, what do you edit out? Even though it's so much bigger, what do you edit out to make a huge big sky a square of just 36 inches, just 3 feet?
So how do you feel, what are some more of like the differences of working small versus working big with the subject matter, right? Like, do you think it changes the composition quite a bit, or like,
I think,
is it less immediate? Like, there must be like some, like with the immediacy of working with like encaustic with these little ones, right?
Well, it's interesting that a 4-inch encaustic only takes a small amount. It's only a little bit smaller block of time than a 16-inch. So we've now increased it 4-fold, which is about the largest I've done in encaustics so far.
Oh, okay.
But oil painting large is physical. So I think there's something about that physicality that is also I don't know if it's more emotional, but I think it connects to your emotions
Sure.
when you're in front of a vertical, plane as well, because in caustic, wax will drip, right? So you're working flat.
Mhm.
There's a definite difference about how you view the piece when you bring it up.
Mhm.
So there, that's one of the differences, and that's a very kind of expected sort of thing. But I
Sure.
don't think I thought about it when I switched to media back and forth.
Yeah.
And with this new show, I did an encaustic piece, and then I would do an oil piece. And then I would do it because you have to wait for the oil piece to dry.
Yeah,
So in
so
between, go do some
something.
encaustic.
Yeah. Oh God, otherwise I would.
So
I can't wait for things to dry. I always have to do something else. Otherwise, I'll go back into it too soon.
yeah, I consulted a few oil painters and said, okay, what can I do to make this work faster? And they said, if you really want the best work, you don't want to work fast.
Yeah.
You want to train yourself to be patient. So I'm a very, and a lot of artists say this, I'm very ADHD. So I always
Sure.
have several projects
Sure.
going in the studio at
Yeah.
once. But the physicality of it, I think, brings a movement. Like the large planes give you the ability to try to capture movement in a different way.
Mhm.
There's speed and there's, reactivity in the small encaustics, but in the big oils with big brushes, there's that physicality brings movement that you can capture that you might have seen. That's a little harder to capture in the encaustic,
Sure.
but definitely fun to pit them against each other. And I don't know, I've been playing in the studio, so.
It's just so great that you get that there is such an element of play and subject matter that can feel really heavy and that is also that is really wrapped up visually in beauty, right? And in awe. I think that's one thing that we think about with the sunrise is that it's awesome, right? It's
Right.
the traditional, the actual word, what awesome means is just it's beyond you.
Right.
It's just this incredible phenomenon that happens every day. And how that's so wrapped up with feelings of grief for you and mourning, but also, you know what I mean? That sort of those two those sort of two different sides of the spectrum, right? Something
Absolutely.
so incredible and something that we move through for the rest of our lives, losing a parent. And then you have this element of play when you're actually making them. It just seems like such a, I don't want to speak for you, but it seems like such a gift, right?
Absolutely. I mean, well, I don't know if at the point where I revised my artist statement, it still said it, but for a long time, my artist statement talked about, opening the studio door and standing there. And, most mornings I think, oh my gosh, who gets to do this?
Yeah.
Who gets to? I don't watch the news or listen to it
Sure.
between the time I go to bed and before I watch the sun.
That's a good choice.
Because, and often not before between watching the sun and walking into the studio, because life is heavy. It's heavy. It's really heavy this week. And so I find that it's not that I don't want to be informed. It's that I don't want that to totally take over my work. I want time to reflect on what's going on in the world before I go into the studio. So there still is an element of play because I can remember that the world is also good and humanity is also good, even when it's hard. And that, I mean, is the essence of grief, right?
Yeah.
We still have those people with us in so many ways, but I can't pick up the phone.
Right.
And when I was doing this morning for the first time in a long time, but I needed to find someone's number to call. I'm going through my phone and I'm realizing, there's my mentor's number, there's my best friend's number, there's my mother's number, there's my brother's number, there's my father's number. I'm realizing that I've never deleted the people from my phone. It's almost like if I delete them from my phone, am I deleting them from my heart?
Yeah.
I can't quite justify that. So yes, there's heaviness. But I think about my mom and how playful she was despite everything. I mean, she grew up amidst bombs and horror the first 7 years of her life. And, kids before war, they have nothing to do with the political climate.
Oh.
She had nothing to do with what was happening in Germany. She just happened to be born before it.
Yeah.
But then she suffered for it for the rest of her life. And there were other things that were hard, from abusive relationships to leaving her homeland to going back to care for her parents. they're, you know, and chronic pain eats at you.
Oh, yeah.
But
It's
my
exhausting, like, the
mom
other
was
things.
still playful
Yeah.
when her grandkids, both my stepchildren and my older son, and even my younger son to some extent, he didn't have as much young time with her as the rest. She was a fiber artist, we'll call her that. She was a knitter.
Okay.
But they would take all of her colorful yarn and spread it across her house. Like it was, and they would climb through it during the day when we lived above her for
Wow.
a short time. And Elliot, my oldest, who's now 30 and would be mortified to hear me mention this. I mean,
We won't send them the link. It's fine.
well, yeah, we will, because it's kind of fun to torture them in their adult years. But you know, that was like that playfulness is a highlight for him in his life, like seeing her like that. And one of our young local artists is part of our family now. And when my mom first came back to the States, when I first brought her back, I was in a gallery space that had a big window, and my mom was a window dresser. That's what she studied in her apprenticeship, and her dad had delis and fine food stores. So she would do his windows. Well, then she was doing my window with Kelly, and we were doing a winter window. And I guess I'm kind of wondering if maybe my mom's brain cancer had already affected her, because we didn't know about it then.
Sure.
But she was in the window, and by then she had shrunk a little bit. She was like 5'2", and Kelly's in there, and Kelly has that fake snow.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm, you know, it's glitter, and it's,
Yeah.
I'm still finding
Kinda
it, and I'm
weird.
two places later.
Yeah.
But my mom was like, Kelly, more snow, and they're throwing it all over, and it's like infiltrating the gallery and the classroom space and the press, and you know, it's just, she was so much fun, you know, to be. So what better way than to have the work be playful and to be fun and to explore new things. And I wasn't with my mom as I discovered that I would become a visual artist. So she was overseas, and I was in a new marriage with a new baby. And, you know, I was 37 when I went to art school. So, you know, Kelly was 17 when she started doing public art, you know, our young artist who's part of our family. And I was 37. I mean, think about this difference. And yet, you know, I can see that this has, like, when she came back and she saw what I was doing, it re-energized her. And, you know, it was fun. It was fun to have her there and to be able to participate with her. And, you know, she was somewhere in her, no matter how hard it was, she was happy. Like she had that internal joy. Yeah. You know, there's happiness and then there's joy, right?
Joy is definitely like, it's a deeper, it feels deeper than
well, and it can
happiness.
stay with you through that grief, through that hardship. That's kind of what I think about. So this has been healing, like, to do this, but it's also been nice to give her, you know, to give back to her even now, even after her loss. But
that's amazing.
It's fun work.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I'm so happy for you that there is like this, I don't know, that it brings you joy, and then it brings you play, and that, I think what a lovely way to honor her, and just to honor also life and existence, you know, like having access to a sunrise, and like being a human, and just adding.
And we all have it, right?
Yeah.
Who hasn't seen it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's universal.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe someone sees a piece and thinks about the title and thinks, you know what? I get a new start today. I mean, what isn't better than a fresh start? Yeah. Like, what is the paradigm shift? And I think about sunrise. There's one other thing that you were talking about, it being awesome. And I was thinking about it, you know, we talk about having an epiphany, right? As a light bulb moment. But there's no bigger light bulb.
Oh, no.
There's no bigger light bulb. So what better time of day, like, to have that moment and then have that carry throughout your day. Yeah. And so maybe it seems like pretty work. It doesn't seem very conceptual, but it's, to me, it's very much conceptual. And the fact that it's pretty is just a bonus. Sure. Yeah. It's just a bonus.
It's just a bonus. Yeah. Well, this is such a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for getting personal and for coming out here to to have this conversation about the work.
Oh, I'm so excited to be
Yeah.
here. I think the powder room is it's a great idea.
Oh,
I
thank
mean, like
you.
every space should be filled with art.
Yeah.
Right?
Otherwise, like what, we have these walls, why not?
Why not cover them with something beautiful?
Yeah. I mean, people
So-
go in there, they use the space, so I mean, as long as everyone, if the people showing you they're okay with it, then why not?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, pleasure. Always a pleasure. Yeah. So, thanks.